Hello everyone, today I thought I would sit down and talk to you about GCSEs because ever since I did my video last year kind of talking about how to pass your GCSEs and revision tips, a lot of you have been asking for kind of specific subject advice. So today I thought I would talk about maths. Maths was actually like one of my least favourite subjects when I was doing GCSEs, and I never really thought that I'd get a good grade at the end of it because I just didn't enjoy the subject, and obviously if you don't enjoy a subject it's a lot harder to motivate yourself to kind of revise for it. But I ended up getting an A, and that's why I thought I would make this video for you guys, because honestly if I can get an A in maths, anyone can. So I've got about 5-ish tips which will hopefully help you when you're revising. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So my first tip is one that I always mention, and it's revision guides. For me, revision guides were an absolute lifesaver, and most exam boards actually make revision guides specific for their course, which is really good because then, you know, you're only learning the things which will likely be on your exam. And for me, I did Edexcel, I think, and I had these two revision guides and a workbook, and they worked amazingly for me because I always really struggled to keep up in class because they put me in top set, even though I definitely had no idea what was going on half the time. So revision guides just were a lifesaver for me, and I definitely recommend investing in them because honestly the majority of my GCSEs, the reason that I did well was because I bought revision guides and I basically learnt them. And to be honest, if you just learn a revision guide, you can probably at least get a solid B, but obviously if you want to get the kind of higher A's and A stars, you may need to do some kind of extra revision. But if you just learn a revision guide, I'm not saying that's the only thing you should do, but basically if you just learn your revision guide, you should be able to get at least a solid B. And I know GCSEs are different this year. They've brought in the new course and they're marked, I think, 1 to 9. So obviously I used the old kind of specs, so I don't really know how it works now, but I'm just kind of basing it off of what I learned, so hopefully it will still apply to your GCSEs. My next tip is to learn the formulas. So a lot of formulas for us, again, I don't really know how it really works in the new GCSEs, but for us quite a few formulas were given to us at the start of the paper, but there were some which you had to learn. So for instance, let's say Pythagoras. Just learn the formulas basically, because once you know the formulas you can just focus on kind of applying your knowledge to the question. And if you want to know a quick way to learn them, I would recommend flashcards. Those are the best way for me to quickly learn kind of key terms and formulas. So I would definitely just recommend writing out all of the formulas which you need to learn, putting them on flashcards and just going through until you know them all, because this is really going to help you out when you're in the exam. My next tip is past papers, and past papers are an absolute lifesaver in every single subject that you do, unless you're doing like art, but there isn't really an exam. But yeah, past papers are a lifesaver. Most exam boards will keep all of their old past papers on their website, such as AQA and Edexcel. They always do, and I know I keep saying this and you do have a new spec for your GCSEs, but the questions are probably going to be pretty similar in terms of the topics covered and things, so I would still recommend just printing off a past paper and going through it, and then any answers you don't know you can correct yourself and go through, because it gives you a rough idea of what kind of place you're at in terms of grade that you may get. So when I was doing past papers I was always getting solid B's, because when we did our GCSEs all the harder questions are kind of at the end of the paper, and I always really struggled with those. So going through past papers I could kind of pinpoint where my weak areas were, and then it made it easier to kind of go back and fix the weaker areas, because if you're already strong on a topic, obviously just go over it a few times, but don't spend all your time on that topic, because at the end of the day if you know it now you're still going to know it in a few months in your exam. So you really just want to be focusing and pinpointing your weaker subjects and topics so that you can improve those, and that will significantly help raise your grade. My final tip is to work backwards, and this only really works when you're doing past papers and practice tests. But basically if you're really stuck on a question and have no idea what's going on, which I know I was a lot of the time, what you want to do is get the answer and work backwards from it. So if you kind of, I don't really know how to explain it, but basically if you look at the question, see what the correct answer is, and maybe if the mark scheme gives you a formula or something, you can work backwards and see how they got to that answer. And even though technically you didn't really do the question because you didn't answer it properly, it helps because you can go back and kind of memorize the steps to how they get to the correct answer. I don't really know if I'm making sense the way I'm saying it, but if you just work backwards from the correct answer, I really found that that helped me kind of work out how you get from A to B basically. Those are all of my proper tips, but my final tips in the exam is just to stay calm, and when you're answering the questions, we were basically told to just do the easiest questions first, because if you start with the hardest questions and you don't know the answer, you're going to panic, and that's really going to affect how well you do in your exam. So just start off with the easiest questions that you know the answer to, just to kind of ease you into the exam so that you relax a bit. And then once you have done all the easiest questions, hopefully as well you've kind of secured a few marks so that you know you're going to at least get an okay grade and pass, then you can kind of go on to the harder questions and spend some time on them. My one tip is make sure you go back and check your answers. That is a really big thing when you're in the exam, because obviously you're under a lot of pressure when you're in there, so you kind of stress a bit, and you know, you may make a really silly mistake which you may not have noticed at first. So make sure you go back and read your answers really carefully. If you've got 5 minutes left at the end of your exam, use them and just go through and like meticulously check every answer, because you really want to make sure that you're getting those easy marks, because they are what are going to help you push up your grade. Because to be honest, I don't really know if I should say this, but when I did my maths exams, the last questions, like, I had no idea what was going on, and I kind of just threw in formulas which I knew maybe applied to it, put in some numbers just in case I could get a few marks. But I think the main reason I still got an A is because I went back and made sure all of the easier questions which I could do I got right. Obviously you don't know for sure, but you have a pretty good idea as to whether you think you got the right answer for something. So just make sure you get those easy marks, and you can easily get yourself an A or an A star, which is a 1 or a 2 now I think, but you kind of get my gist. So those are all of my tips. I really hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you want me to do any more specific subjects, let me know down below. I'm thinking of covering English next, because obviously maths and English are 2 GCSEs which you kind of have to pass to get any job. So I'm probably going to do English next, but let me know if you have any specific things you want me to talk about, or if there's any other subjects you want me to talk about. Obviously if I didn't do them, such as history, I can't really give you such specific advice, but just leave any requests you have for school related videos down below, because I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more coming up to kind of GCSE time, because I know when I was doing my GCSEs I watched a lot of videos to try and help me, because I just find them a lot more interesting than actually having to do the work and just still kind of being productive. So yeah, if you have any requests, do let me know down below. But that said, I think that's everything, so I will see you guys next week with another video.